Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Gaming and a new video on the channel explaining how the campaign is going to work in Path of Exile 2 and what you can do whilst completing the campaign. This was covered in detail in the reveal, and this video is made for people that either want a quick summary or they missed the live reveal. So when the game goes live, there's going to be 3 full acts ready to go that you're going to need to play through twice to get to endgame. The second time, the levels of the zones are adjusted as if this was acts 4 to 6, which will come later on in the life cycle of the game. Essentially, it's a 6-act game, but they finished 3 and then decided endgame was much more important, so the other 3 will come later on. Each zone in the campaign is randomly generated and the bosses spawn in random locations, so it seems like learning layouts is not going to be possible, but zones may take on familiar routes each time. We're just going to have to wait and see. There are a ton of bosses to be killed within the campaign zones, some of which need to be killed to progress the story, and other bosses are optional but give you a permanent boost to your character. So these bosses are marked in zones with this skull symbol. They're similar to the optional bosses in Path of Exile 1 that grant you extra skill points, but in Path of Exile 2 they'll give you boosts like increased fire resistance, increased spirit. You don't have to take these bosses on straight away. If they're too tough, you can always come back later and melt them when you're better geared. Towns are going to take a similar approach to in Path of Exile, and this is where you can sell or buy gear from vendors, and you can also interact with the new gamble vendor. He acts like the black market in Settlers of Cowgirl League, so you can just buy random gambled items for gold. The developers have also confirmed that exalts, which are still used to add mods to gear, will be much more plentiful, and we should find a few per act. It's going to be interesting to see whether exalts become the new Chaos Orb in trading and is the go-to currency for purchasing items. I feel like Chaos Orbs seem like they're going to be rarer and potentially more powerful, so these may end up being the new Divine Orb. The act map looks pretty vast, so I'm sure there's going to be some hidden content and discoveries to be made along the way. As with the new expansion in Path of Exile 1, you can respec your passive tree points for gold, which will make the campaign much more forgiving for newer and older players alike who make mistakes when pathing through the skill tree early on. A big difference between Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2 is that zones now reset on death. To help with that, there are checkpoints along the way and before boss battles. But gone are the PoE 1 days of being able to corpse rush a boss, die 20 times, but chip the boss down bit by bit and get through. I think this is a good thing because I remember my very first playthrough in Path of Exile, I took about 30 lives to kill Kitava, and then I just got obliterated at maps and ended up having to restart a different character because mine just didn't work. So the boss encounters fully reset on death. Some of these bosses look fairly difficult, so be prepared to die a lot until you work out the moves and mechanics of the bosses you're fighting. Hopefully there's none that are stupidly overtuned that we have to go and over-level in a zone to be able to take him on. But from what I've seen, it looks doable. It just looks like you have to learn the mechanics of the bosses. Now, the currency exchange from Settlers League has also made its way into PoE 2, and it's going to be available at launch, and it looks like you can interact with it during the campaign. Whether you have the gold or currency to do so is another matter. It's not clear at the moment whether lead mechanics such as Expedition or Ritual will pop up in the campaign, but I don't remember seeing this in any footage or gameplay demos, so I'll assume that these will start turning up in maps. The last thing I wanted to cover off is Ascendancies. So the Labyrinth is no more. For those that haven't played Path of Exile, you unlock subclasses on your character in Path of Exile 1 by completing something called the Labyrinth. It's basically a maze of traps and trials, and at the end you kill a boss. I absolutely hate it. Some people like it. It's great in one aspect for me that it's gone. However, Izaro, the boss in Labyrinth, has some amazing voice lines and also has a pet called Argus, and they have a very strange and funny relationship. I do hope they make it back into PoE 2 at some point in the future. So the new way to ascend your character is a lot more flexible. There are going to be 3 trial locations that you find during the campaign. At launch of Early Access, there's only going to be 2 available. The first is the Trial of the Secumers, which is essentially a revamped Sanctum with resolve, boons, and everything else that we're used to seeing in Sanctum. For those that haven't played Path of Exile, this is kind of like a roguelite game where you have to get through rooms with getting hit as few times as possible and completing objectives. You pick up boons that help you along the way, but rooms also have debuffs that can really affect how easy it is to complete these. Second is the Temple of Chaos, which is a revamped version of a mechanic in Path of Exile called Ultimatum. This is essentially a round-based fight where you get increased rewards but increased difficulty as you go on, and at any point you can choose to end that encounter and take your rewards. However, to complete the trial, you need to complete a full 3 rounds. So if you leave early, you will get rewards, but you will lose your access token that you used to go into that trial. When you complete either of the trials successfully, you're given 2 Ascendancy points. And if it's like Path of Exile 1, you will have 8 Ascendancy points at your disposal. Now, the trials are not free to enter. You have to get a key to access them. It looks like this comes from the relevant NPC linked to each mechanic, but they may also drop in the campaign zone. I assume these may also be tradable with other players. The good thing about the way they've done it in Path of Exile 2 is you can choose which trial you want to complete. So you don't have to do Sanctum to get your first 2 points, then go and do Ultimatum, then go and do the third one when it unlocks. You choose a trial you like doing the best. Every time you complete it, you get 2 Ascendancy points. I like this aspect as I'm a big fan of Ultimatum and I suck at Sanctum and don't really enjoy it. Lastly, for those who may not be familiar with Path of Exile and the developer's philosophy, there will be no campaign skip for new characters. Each character you make will need to run through the campaign. However, you will have access to the currency you've got on your main account. You'll be able to buy some leveling uniques. You can make the acts much quicker and much easier on a second character. I personally like this approach compared to something like D4, where you just run Helltides forever. But I know a lot of people dislike the grind of campaigns once you've got over the initial few playthroughs. That's kind of it for the video. Wanted to keep it short and sweet. I will bring out a video summarising the endgame and then possibly a video going through my take on all the Ascendancies based on what we know so far. As always, thank you very much for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.